just the fact that you are born makes you exceptional and sacred. So I would relate to you as a sacred being. I request you do that to yourself. And if you could generate that for yourself, and if everybody was doing it, we would have peace in the world.
The roadmap back to you. Reshape your world from the inside out and find peace of mind. So today I'm interviewing an exquisite woman with a fascinating journey. This is a woman who has been a helicopter pilot, a teacher, a designer, a war refugee, a CEO, a woman that has been shot at, shipwrecked, and widowed. She has not only led transformational seminars to over 80,000 people, she's also a wisdom teacher and an author. So this is a conversation that you do not want to miss. Welcome, Sophie Mclean. We are going to dive deep into her wisdom, story, mindset, and journey.
Vavi, thank you for having me. I'm delighted that we're connecting, and I'm so looking forward to our conversation.
So, Sophie, what is the impact that you would like to make on the world, your purpose or the commitment that you have?
Really, it comes up in a nutshell. It's to create a new culture for humankind. And it's not that there is anything wrong with the existing culture there is, but there is no resisting evolution, right? There is this evolutionary impulse. And I really experience in the most profound level that there is a shift happening in what it is to be a human being. And I want to participate in that shift. So I say I'm participating in the creation of a new culture for humankind, a culture of care, cooperation, integrity, authenticity, love, where our values are altruism and tenderness versus, other producing result of success or something, whatever drives most of our cultures right now. And it's been a lifelong passion of mine.
That's beautiful. And when was the first time or that you realized that this is what your commitment is?
When I was, I think 11 or 12, Bavi, I had a gift. I had an epiphany, and I'm so grateful for it. I didn't do anything for it, and that's why I call it a gift. I was brought up in Casablanca, Morocco, and I was in the garden. I remember it so well. I was in the garden and looking from afar at my family getting ready to sit down for dinner on the terrace. And I must have been in a quiet place of stillness or something. And I had literally a download, right? And the first thing I not understand, but I was shown was that the cocoon I was being brought up inside of, it was very gentle and very tender and was absolutely not a reflection of what was happening in the world. But it had nothing to do with it. I was protected and everything was beautiful. And the world was so much more than that. There was suffering and distress and joy and challenges. I mean, the whole of life was shown to me, right? So suddenly I thought, whoa, I'm in a bubble. I need to get out of my bubble. And then the second insight was that whatever I was shown, which we call life, was just an illusion. So I was stunned. I just realized we were in a theater play, and that if you attach any significance to the play and pretended that it was reality, you would suffer. So I ran and ran and ran and ran to my family. And I told them, "Oh, do you know everything is an illusion?" And so I tried to explain from my 12 years of experience. And I got my nickname, the crazy one. I think I didn't do a very good job of explaining. And my nickname stayed with me for years. But I never forgot that I had that vision and that gift. And I was always fascinated by what was possible. When I see this, I saw as I was growing up the suffering of humankind. I knew there was something else possible. I knew we were not condemned to victimization and suffering and division and conflict. So I really could never resist that impulse. I mean, it made me inquire into Dharma and, what if we have a destiny, if we come here with already a mission, because I literally experienced that the choice is not from this plane, this material plane. It is not Sophie as a character that is choosing that Dharma. It comes from somewhere else. I cannot resist it. I did try to resist it. And whenever I think of doing something else, I get miserable.
And you mentioned about suffering, and that this realization that there was so much suffering going on, and there is so much of that right now. So many people are experiencing so many different challenges. Pandemic itself has brought up so much financial problems, health problems. So in many ways, a lot of limitations that many people, I believe, are experiencing. So what keys or words of advice do you have to liberate out of these challenges that we have day to day?
Well, the first thing is it really feels like the universe is telling us, go to your bedroom and re-look at who you are being, right? Like we are sent to a corner to just examine our priorities of life. So, I'm never going to say, the pandemic is the wrath of the divine on mankind or whatever. I'm not one of those person. I just absolutely don't go there. I don't even look for an explanation of it. It's just what is, right? What is that we are going through this upheaval. So there is two ways always in life. There is always two ways. One is to resist, and by resisting, I mean blaming, regretting, wishing it was different. It shouldn't be that way. It's not fair that it's that way. Then you will suffer. And the other way is to dance with what life is giving us, right? Now, to be able to dance with the symphony of life, you need to fall in love with life. So, what does that mean? Well, as a human being, the opportunity is to develop this faith, this trust in the universe that the universe never makes mistake. It is always perfect the way it is because it is, right? What is and what is not is not. So when you can surrender to the perfection of it all, even if you don't like what you're dealing with it, but that you have this faith in the universe will always give you what you need, not what you want. The universe doesn't give you what you want, but it gives you what you need. Then you can surrender to the upheaval and use it as the opportunity to elevate your consciousness. Inside of the shift we were talking about from Homo sapiens, which is the brain of the ego, to Homo spiritus, which is connected to the divine, but expressed on the material world. It's like a birth, right? I think the reign of the ego is coming to an end. And as you very rightly said, there is a lot of division, conflict, suffering, and it reminds me of a birth. Any birth takes place in pain, right? It's a little bit like the worm that becomes a butterfly. So there is a worm, then it gets in a cocoon, and in the cocoon, he literally dissolves itself. Can you imagine? It gets all mushy, like liquefied, and then goes back to being a butterfly. Well, I think we're in the cocoon place, and I am sure the worm is not happy about liquefying itself. That must not be pleasant. And I believe this is what we're going through before we come out as a butterfly. So I have an enormous compassion. This is a time to re-examine everything about our priority, what is important to us, to get together, because it is together that we can go through this upheaval. it's not by surviving it. It's in fact by surrendering. And surrendering doesn't mean condoning or loving it or liking it. Surrendering means this is the moment in front of me right now. That moment is the consequence of everything that happened since the beginning of time. It is not personal to me, but what life is requiring and demanding of me is that participate in the moment in front of us, right? So we need to dance to participate in whatever the moment in front of us is. And that is the best way to deal with what we are dealing with. And if you have the suffering, the anxiety of people is expanding, because one of the biggest anxiety trigger is finance, right? The one of the biggest fear in human being is not to have a roof over your head or the head of your family and not having enough food. And that will throw us into survival like no other things. So I have the most enormous compassion. But if you are confronting this anxiety of physical survival, this is the opportunity to go through it once and for all. And that requires courage, and it requires support, and it requires an education in awareness, but it is possible. And that's what I stand for.
So what is the step that someone would take in a practical way to break out of that? Like, is there something that one can do, or is it?
You mean of the anxiety?
Yeah.
The first step is to make a difference between fear and anxiety. You see, the tool we have on this earth to interact and exist is language. And people are very casual with language, right? And if sometimes I say to my students, okay, you have to make a distinction between fear and anxiety. And they say it's semantic. Joy and happiness, it's semantic. No, it's not semantic. It's a question of you're either going to suffer or you're going to be liberated and at peace. So fear is essential for human beings and for animals. It's because without fear, if you were confronted with a lion and you didn't experience fear, you would be eaten up. Right? So fear of fire, of elements, fear is good. Fear means that you won't put your hand in the fire. So fear is immediate, in the present. You are confronted with a car nearly running you over. You'll have an enormous surge of fear. All your hormone will be reactivated. Your adrenaline will release and you'll cope with it. So all the stress hormone will support you in either fight or flight kind of mode, right? Great. Now, anxiety is very different. Anxiety has nothing to do with the present moment. Anxiety is always what might happen in the future if that or that or that or that happened, and what if that happened, and what if that happened. So anxiety is entirely located in the future, looking at the future, comparing with what you had in the past, and it has nothing to do with the present moment. Now, here's a problem with anxiety. First, anxiety happens over a long period of time. Some people can spend their entire night in anxiety, thinking about what might happen, right? So the stress hormones used over a very long period of time, and this is not what our body is for. Our body is to have surges, not over days of having, stress hormone being released. So first you damage yourself physically, and secondly, the anxiety robs you totally of your freedom because you're not present. See, the future doesn't exist. The future, there is no place called the future that you will get to one day. That, people really do live as if there was, but there is no future. That doesn't exist except in your language, right? There is not a place called the future where we will get to, where we'll all be thin, rich, happy. No, that doesn't exist. And there is no place called the past you can go back to. The past only exists because when we talk about it. So then, if you are kidnapped by anxiety, you now in the realm of the illusion. You are now either in the future or in the past, and those are illusions. They're not real. Therefore, there is a suffering. So for those moments of upheaval, right, the key is to be present moment by moment by moment and to literally experience that time is a conversation and all there is right now. And then you can actually deal with what is happening right now. So that is the easiest access. It is simple. It's not easy. It's the simplest as access to being present and to deal with what is happening in the world.
And in terms of, a lot of the people that listen to this podcast are people that want to create an impact, want to make a difference, want their time here to be of a contribution. So within that, what tips do you have for an individual? How do they tap into that?
Yeah, that's such a good question, Bavi, because, as soon as you go on the road to enlightenment, right? We all are on that. I mean, not all of us, but those of us that are listening to this conversation that you're providing are engaged in the spiritual road or the road of awareness. I mean, you call it whatever you want. But the moment you start that road, you have this urge to contribute, right? But most human being wants to contribute. And every time something happens, we always have a thought, what can I do? What can I do to help, right? Well, there is an answer that is maybe a little bit different, but what you need, the first thing you can do to contribute to the global elevation of consciousness is to bring awareness to yourself and liberate yourself from your automatic ego. So I'm not talking about, there is a bad vibe about self-development, right? Because some people go onto the self-development road and they are trying to fix and change themselves. I call it collective fulfillment. I don't practice everything I practice for myself. I practice being aligned with my soul and being present so that I can contribute, right? So how you can make a difference with everybody to the global community starts with you. Once you remember who you really are, once you have shifted from an automatic ego to a conscious ego, because you do need an ego if you're going to participate in life as we know it. But there is an enormous difference between automatic ego and conscious ego. Once you remember who you really are, then your contribution is beyond what I can express. And the Dalai Lama said it so beautifully. He said, if you seek enlightenment for yourself, you are a fool. If you seek enlightenment for others, then you are wise. And this is exactly it, is that once you deconstruct and dismantle and disentangle all your persona, your personality, your character, and your ego, then you remember who you really are. Then you'll be able to create a character that will make a difference in the global community. So that is the best way to make a difference in the world. You see, I mean, I love children and I see children dying of hunger. And I have thought sometimes, I say to myself, okay, just abandon everything you do and just go and feed those children. And then I bring awareness and I say, no, the more people I can educate, the more people that will remember who they really are and bring love and care and altruism to the world, then the hunger will disappear. Because when you enjoy and gratitude, there will be no war. You know, when you've experienced joy and gratitude, you're not going to go and kill someone or fight for someone. When you experience joy and gratitude, you contribute. One of the most important step towards living a spiritual life is to fall in love with yourself. And to fall in love with who you are, you need to bring compassion and tenderness and gentleness. So for all of you that are listening, if I was in your presence, I would give you love and tenderness and gentleness. So why? Because you are born. Just the fact that you are born makes you exceptional and sacred. So I would relate to you as a sacred being. I request you do that to yourself. And if you could generate that for yourself, and if everybody was doing it, we would have peace in the world. So please love yourself because we love you.
And so you have a very strong conviction that this new culture is possible. You see it, you feel that this is possible for humanity.
Yes, and it has been said by many tribes, many mystic, many. I mean, it's been announced for a very long time. I've had extraordinary. For the past 10 years, I've engaged in a spiritual pursuit. So I just went to shamans in the Amazon forest, and I went to India, to the Kumela. I went all over the place, and I had a out of body experience. I mean, extraordinary experiences, and I know, but it's a knowing that is not intellectual. It's like not Sophie's knowing, but I experience that it is happening. I don't, language is quite limited, but yes, there is a shift. And David Hawkins, which is one of my favorite authors, said there is a shift from Homo sapiens to Homo spiritus. So I took it from him, and that was 20 years ago. It's happening. I don't know when or how long it will take, but it's happening quite fast. Everything with our culture is happening fast now. So,
So, Homo spiritus, I don't know what that term means.
so you know how, as a Homo sapiens, as a human being incarnated in our body, we use our five senses. So when people use their five senses and think that's all there is, we look externally for energy and externally for groundedness. So people identify with money, job title, being married, all the external things that we have in the world. That's a Homo sapiens, right? That's a source of a lot of suffering. If you look for love in another person, then you will suffer because you are now condemned to be attached to that person, right? So that's Homo sapiens. And Homo spiritus is the person that remembers that who they really are is a soul, right? The soul is located in the quantum field, and you incarnate in a body on the material plane, but you are operating in the material plane, but you from the quantum world, the spiritual world. So not only do you use your five senses, but you then have access to authentic powers, being guided, intuition, all the miraculous power of the divine and the spiritual. That's a Homo spiritus.
I wanted to ask you, in your life, because I know that you've had so many things that have happened in an eventful life as you share. Can you share a challenging moment in your life and maybe how you overcame that challenge?
Well, the first thing is, it never stops, right? I've been at it for 35 years. And really, truly, you can never get to the top of the mountain. the moment you get to the top of a mountain, there is the next one. So the first thing I want to say is that what makes the biggest difference in my life is that I'm not going anywhere. This is the game. The game is, and the myth of Sisyphus that is created by ancient Greece, right, is perfect. He was condemned to roll a boulder up a mountain, and every time he reached to the top, the boulder just ran down. That is exactly life. So that's the first thing that I would like to say is that when you live life with nowhere to go, it's delicious because you can be present. And the question to ask oneself is, where are you going? I would like to know where everybody's going. We're not going anywhere. I mean, all there is now. So my challenge, right? So there I am, 2009. I stopped leading seminar. I leave the company I was working for, and I have this urge to go and find out about the spiritual. I was working so much. I didn't have time for much. So I said, okay, this is it. I am on a mission. So I go around the world. I do everything. I have the most extraordinary adventures. Marvelous, right? And then in 2015, or 16, I say, okay, well, I've left my home and my family when I was 18. I'm now 55. Okay, I'll go back and settle next to my family in the south of France. It will be good. So I get, and Provence is absolutely glorious, right? So I get this little house with a pool and a garden, like, oh, beautiful. And I'm there, and the weather is fantastic, and I'm with my family. And after a year, I notice I am totally miserable, but totally miserable in this paradise, right? And so I'm just looking, I'm going, okay, there is something here. Well, what's the matter with you? Well, I was resisting going back to giving my contribution to the world, right? So the conversation was in my head, it was like, who do you think you are? Who do you think you are to create a new culture for humankind? Why would people listen to you? You are so arrogant. Those conversations, that voice in your head, that, oh, just, and I didn't know how people would look at me and would think of me, and all about outside and external image I was going to give, right? And it is, fortunately, I was able to bring awareness to it, right? And then there was this extraordinary moment of choice where I call that a moment of truth, where I looked at my life in this paradise. I could stay and then have regret not to have taken the risk to give what I had and go against this impulse I have inside of myself to contribute, or I could sell my house, move back to New York and to the United States, use my network, and take the risk to start my own business, this time on my own, and just go and make the difference I want to make. So I did. I made the choice because with awareness, you just look at what is there and you say to yourself, okay, neither one nor the other is better. And how do I want to look back at my life at the end of my life? Right. So when you surrender to what wants to happen, then life becomes with ease and grace. So but it was very difficult for me because I had to stop being the student and be willing to become the one, the teacher. And I had at a certain level, because as you say, I led to 80,000 people and all that, but it was inside of a structure and I had a kind of protection, and I always had masters and gurus and teachers and many, all my life. And suddenly the moment of truth came when I said, you know what? You have to stop hiding behind being the student. You need to now go and give what you have. And that's called a teacher. So I stepped in. That was my last, the latest, the latest breakthrough.
And as a woman and as a female in this field and in this work, how have you found that impacting you? How have you found your voice, your power, and your stand as a female leader?
So one of the things I did during those 10 years of seeking was studying tantric yoga, which is the feminine and the masculine. And that is, as a, the tantra is the fusion of the masculine and the feminine as an access to the divine, right? And I did how to answer your question, how I deal with my leadership as a woman is by first making sure that I don't have any unexamined reaction or barriers about the feminine and the masculine, right? So I did the personal work on myself. So to give you an example, I tend to have more feminine energy before the age of 28. And then my husband died very shockingly 5 days after I got married, and I had to run his company and had 4 stepchildren. So I had suddenly a lot of responsibility on top of the grief. So what I did is that I generated a kind of masculine ego energy that was forceful and harsh, and I protected myself because the feminine energy was quite conscious that I had was fluid, and I was too scared. I went into survival. So before I stepped into this conscious leadership that I'm now providing, I examined the feminine and the masculine, got distinction in it, spent 3 years studying until I'm able to generate both. Both gives you a very complete way of being. I am more comfortable with the power of the feminine. I am very much into relatedness, love, a lot of emotion. So I'm more comfortable there, but I'm absolutely capable of generating the masculine conscious if I need to. So that's how I deal with it. I don't consider myself as a woman leader, even if I have a woman body. I I operate at the level of energy, feminine or masculine, and I at the moment the world needs more feminine energy to reach the balance and an equilibrium because we are kilter at the moment. So this is what I do.
I had one kind of final question, or I wanted to ask you is that one of the things that I've been inquiring a lot about is craft, mastering your craft. So the way I see your journey is you've really worked on mastering your craft around leadership, around coaching. And so what thoughts do you have around creating mastery around a field? Do you have any guidance or suggestions or thoughts?
Yes. From my experience, you need to have a certain focus and direction, right? So if you want to master anything, you can't disperse yourself all over the place. So you need to, like, for example, I focused on the dismantling of the ego until I mastered that. So then the spiritual arose, right? So you need to be quite focused. And then the only secret is to practice. Practice and practice and practice. I have 3 masters in philosophies. I have 4 years of studying ontology. I have so many things. None of those made the difference. Bavi, I promise you, I have those on my CV because people are reassured if they know I have masters in philosophy, but truly, those masters in philosophies I've got, they didn't make the difference in my life. What made the difference is 80,000 people that I personally worked with. They made the difference with me. They taught me, they gave me access to the mastery. So it's practice. And then, of course, the golden rule, never quit. Never quit. Things take time. We live inside of distance, time, and form. You need to be responsible for the illusion of time. There is no time in the spiritual world, but there is some on the material world. So you need to never quit. You just, as long as you're aligned with who you are, you just take one step at a time.
Mm, that's brilliant. And how about finding the craft that you want to master? Like really having that be in tune with your soul's purpose or what's in alignment with you. How do you access what that even is?
You need to dismantle your ego. Babi, that's the most powerful. I know some people find it like that, but my way is when you meet who you really are, when you remember who you really are, the rest becomes very simple. You just need to shed all the barriers and all the illusion. Then it will be right there, right there. I mean, my students are all being in action. You know, they have no hurry, they have no anxiety, and they just create their life now with peace and harmony. If you can connect to your soul, you know, life is exquisite.
Yeah. And this dismantling of ego, what does that look like? What does that process look like?
Well, it's actually quite simple and doesn't take that long. You know, in my course over 8 months, it takes 3 months to dismantle the ego, but it takes people that are committed and that really, you know, that's why I limit my space in the course because, you know, you need to be clear about what you want to accomplish. You need to be a player, not a spectator. It is really, it is the when you actually experience the illusion you've been living inside of, then you will remember who you really are. So the process is just to give up all the illusion. That's how the code. Everything that you have been believing or used by, you give up until what is left is you. Because you are always you, right? There is just a whole barriers on top of you having an experience of yourself. So we just removing all the barriers. You know, the spiritual path is always about giving up.
Mm, yeah. Okay. And would you like to share a little bit about your upcoming course and program? Because I've had a read through that and it looks phenomenal. And
Yeah. So inside of my commitment to create a new culture for humankind, right? I needed to reach a lot of people. So I created a few free course. I'm so excited. Thousands of people are doing it. It is so great. We have a Facebook group and I do daily video with them to support them. It's really great. It's called The Call of the Soul. It's totally free. There is no catch. You can go to my website and register. It's 21 email with videos and my book chapters. So at the end of the free course, you get all my book as well. So that's one, right? Which is the for people, for everybody. I mean, truly, I have somebody from Uganda in that free course. It's so cool. So then I have a live course starting on June 12th. That is, I take only 50 students because I want to have a personal interaction, and that is for the disentangling of the automatic ego. Those are for people that wants to remember who they really are and connect to their soul. And so it's an 8 months course once a week with 50 people, and this is to for people that really want to everything we've spoken about, Babi, people that wants to create, you know, a life of contribution and awareness. And then I have my book, of course, and then I also have one-on-one session. And I have a commitment to transform politicians, CEOs. I work with the UN, you know, people that wants privacy and they want to dismantle their ego, but in private. So I have a one-on-one course for people that wants to do that. So those are my offering at the moment.
yeah. Thank you. This sounds like an exquisite course, and I really appreciate this very nourishing, enriching conversation and dialogue. And Sophie Mclean's got a free course that you can check out her website, and her official course is starting in June. So thank you, Sophie Mclean. I really, really appreciate this conversation. I was looking forward to it all week, and I was getting myself prepared. So I really appreciate the time that you've spent, and it's been an honor to have you here.
Oh, Bevy, it's my honor, truly, that you would be interested in having me. I am very moved and touched.
Oh, that's so beautiful. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome. Thank you for having me on the call. Thank you, my dear.
Hello, friend. Thank you for listening. If this podcast has sparked a flame in you, I encourage you to take the first step and download our free Ikigai journal or join the community at kanagarajourneys.com. Also, I invite you to share this podcast with a friend if you feel it can benefit them. Using the wisdom of the Tao, the Enneagram, meditation techniques, and so much more, I share the tools that have made a profound impact on my own journey and invite experts and high performers to share their secrets. I wish for you love, compassion, and peace, and I look forward to connecting with you on the next episode.